In this video, I'm going to talk you through how you can set up your new site and get it up and running. It's all fairly straightforward. But before we actually get started, there's a few things that you're going to need. And the first thing that you're going to need is a domain name, and there are lots of different places that you can get a domain name from. You're going to need a hosting account, you're going to need an autoresponder account, you're going to need a payment processor, and last one is optional. You might need file hosting as well to host the files on. You don't have to have file hosting, but if you're on shared website hosting, you might find that you use up your bandwidth allocation quite quickly. If you haven't got any of these resources already, here's some companies you might want to consider. For a domain name, a good company to go with is GoDaddy, which you can find here at godaddy.com. GoDaddy is an American firm, but they do have support around the world. You can see here I'm in the UK, so they've got the prices in sterling, but you can also have it in dollars and all these other currencies that they support. And they also have local support numbers. For example, here in the UK, they've got support in London or Birmingham or Glasgow, and the same goes for other countries as well. In the US, I believe they have an 800 number. One good thing about GoDaddy is that you can often find coupons, discount coupons for GoDaddy. If you do a search in Google for GoDaddy coupons, you'll find quite a lot. And you can sometimes get coupons which will let you register a domain for $1. So they are very good value. Another good domain name registrar is Namecheap, which you can find here at namecheap.com. You can also buy hosting from these two companies, but personally I don't recommend it. I recommend that you keep your domain and your hosting separate because that gives you a bit more flexibility. If you're looking for hosting providers, there are lots out there. Probably the most popular one at the moment is HostGator, which you can find here at hostgator.com, and they have all sorts of offers as well, and they have quite a good reputation. But you can also do a search in Google for hosting in your particular country. This is a US based hosting provider. If you decide that you want to have some extra storage for files, particularly for video files and so on, a good one to go with is Amazon S3. You can try that for free, up to 5 gigabytes of storage, I believe is the offer going at the moment. And quite often, if you're on shared hosting, as I was explaining earlier, you might find that you run out of bandwidth or run out of storage space if your videos are very popular. So having an extra service like this can be very helpful, and they are very cheap indeed. For the purposes of this demonstration, I'm actually going to be hosting all the files on my server, but like I say, if you are on shared hosting, you might want to consider having some off-site storage as well. And another provider for this service is Dropbox, which you can find here at dropbox.com. So the order that I recommend you do this in is you get your domain name first from either GoDaddy, Namecheap, or another provider, because you'll need that when you set up your hosting services. They'll want to know your website address, your website URL, so that they can set that up on their servers. So that's the order to do it in first: domain name first, and then hosting provider. Now, once you've got your hosting set up, your hosting provider will send you an email that looks a bit like this, and they're going to tell you that your hosting account's been set up. They'll give you your username and password to access the control panel. Most hosting companies use cPanel, but some have their own proprietary software. It'll tell you how you can access cPanel. Temporarily, it will usually be their IP address /cPanel. once everything's been set up, you should be able to log in via your domain name and then /cpanel. Something that they will tell you which is very important are the name servers for your particular hosting account, and you will need to tell your domain registrar this information so that they can set things up properly their end and point your domain name at your hosting. Now exactly how they do that is going to vary depending on which domain registrar you have. So you need to refer to the instructions that they have on their website. Some will set it up for you. On some others, like GoDaddy for example, you have to enter the information in yourself. But basically the name servers are going to say ns1 dot and then your hosting company, whichever the hosting company's name is, and then ns2, ns3, ns4. There'll be at least 2 name servers. Other hosting providers have more. The one that I use has 4 name servers, and basically this just ties in your domain and your hosting. It can take up to 48 hours for these to be activated depending on your hosting, so you do need to bear that in mind. But once everything is set up, once you've got your domain name, once you've got your hosting, once you've got everything else that you need, you'll be ready to roll. Okay, after you've got all that set up, then the next thing to do is to download the zip files to your hard drive if you haven't already done so, and to unzip them. And the website files folder will unzip to look like this. You're going to have several HTML files, index HTML, privacy HTML, and so on. Now I use Google Chrome as my default web browser, which is why it's displaying these icons. It might look slightly different on your computer. And what we're going to do is we're going to edit the various files here just to customize them, to make them appropriate for you and for your website setup. And there's a couple of ways you can do this. The easiest way, if you're using Windows, is to use Windows Notepad, or you can use an HTML composing software like Composer. Now the first file that we're going to edit is index.html. So right click the icon, and then where it says open with, click here on Notepad. And it'll open a window like this, and this is all the code that runs the HTML web page. So don't worry about what most of the code is. I'll show you the few bits that you're going to need to replace. So the first thing you'll need to do is to change the your name setting with your name. So if you come here to edit and then replace, and we're going to type in your name within square brackets, so bracket your name, and then replace with, and you put the name that you want to put in, and then click on find next, and you see it goes through and it finds the spot here in the code where it says your name in brackets, and you click here replace, and there we go, it says cannot find your name, so there's only one instance, so we're going to click on OK and then click on cancel, and now I'm going to save it just by saving here and then just click on save like that, and there we go. Just close this for a moment, because you'll need to do the same thing here, buyer's main product HTML. You want to do the same on this one here, thank you buyers -OTO HTML, and you'll also want to do it here on index2.html. So I'm just going to pause this video now while I do that. Okay, and that's done. Just close this window. Okay, the next thing you're going to need to do is to add your domain name to the legal pages. And these legal pages are privacy.html and terms.html. So let's open privacy.html. And again, we're opening it with Notepad. Now there's two things that you're going to need to change here. The first is the URL that you're going to host your website on, and the other is the email that you're going to have for support. So you need to change the two things, the website URL and the email address. And again, same thing we're going to do is find and replace. So again, edit and replace, and we're going to type in URL again in square brackets, and then we're going to put in the URL, including the HTTP. Oops, got it in twice. You see I've got a domain for this, which is listbuildingforyou.com. Let's just take out that one, and then again click on replace, and it will go through and find each instance like that. Or you can simply click on replace all, but I don't know, I get a bit paranoid and think, well, how do I know they've replaced all of them? So there we go. Now I know it has. Okay, next thing to do is to replace the email address. So we're going to replace where it says email, so once again in brackets, and I'm going to use an email address that's just for this particular thing, that's just for support. I recommend that you don't put your main email address here, because unfortunately spammers do go through and look at these sort of things. So what I suggest you do is you set up a separate email address just for support and redirect it in cPanel to your main email address. And then if you start getting a lot of spam emails, you can always change it, and then the spam will bounce straight back to the spammer. So let's call this support at listbuildingforyou.com, and we'll click on replace. There we go, and click on OK. And now that's all replaced, so I can click here on cancel, and then I can save it. So click here on save, and that's done. And once again, I'm just going to pause the video while I go through and change everything in terms.html. Okay, I've done that. One other thing to show you here on terms.html, you'll notice that it also says company name. If you have a company and you're trading through a company, then obviously you will want to put your company name there. If you're not trading through a company, if you're just an individual, you can either put your own name or you can put the website name. It's up to you. If you're going to put the website name, I would leave off the HTTP bit here and just put the website with the .com or whichever extension that you have. So let's go ahead and do that. You can see there are several instances. Right, and that's done. Okay, so I can cancel that and save like that. And we'll continue this video in part 2.